one of the things AI cannot do is
Hello everyone, welcome to the next episode of Adventures in Networking. I'm James West.
And I'm Kelly West. We're the founders of Only Networking, the business network for people who like people.
We are indeed. And today we're joined by a fantastic guest. He is one of the nicest people we've met on our networking journey, isn't he, Kelly? James Meadows, aka Jim. That's not a difficult one to work out, is it? He's one of the few people, you're going to learn a lot about Jim as we go through this. He's one of the few people that I think thinks about relationships, networking, and the power of connection as much as we do, Kelly.
Yeah, definitely. And our aim on this show is simple, really, to look at how soft skills such as empathy, relationship building and networking will become more important than ever as the tech improves. And we'll be looking at the edge we have in context of AI particularly, not from a place of fear, but in a positive way.
Absolutely, because there's a lot of negative talk about AI.
Yeah.
There's not enough talk about, well, how can we use it for our advantage and how does it extenuate some of our strengths as human beings and us as networkers. We love that stuff. If you're watching this live, if you're watching it on replay, thanks for watching. If you're watching it live, you've got the added dimension of the ability to add comments. We may feature you live on the show. We do have a question for you if you want something specific. What's the human skill that you think AI will never replace? Because there are definitely going to be some. And if not, we're in trouble, aren't we? But we absolutely will be. There absolutely is. So I think we're going to bring our guest on, aren't we, Kelly? Are you ready?
We are. Yeah,
fantastic. He's joining us live from I nearly said Denver, Colorado, Kansas City, Missouri. Hi, Jim. How are you?
Good day. I am doing fantastic, and I'm in Kansas City, Missouri, but not too far away from Denver.
By our standards, very far away, but thank you for covering up for me. So, Jim, it's great to have you on the show. This whole show is really based on some of the mind-bending conversations that me and you in particular have had. If you don't know James, and you probably don't, well, where do we start, Kelly? He's a business owner, he's an author, he's a writer, he's a fan, and he's a student of business networking. He's been in and around BNI. He's a member of Only, too. Just a big fan of networking, but also a student of networking, because I think that's a really important element. Jim's one of those people that likes to challenge convention, maybe think about ways that we can expand these ideas. So one of the premises, or the strong premises for this show, Jim, was the book. It's Daniel Pink's A Whole New Mind, that we keep coming back to. Can you just give us a little summary of the ideas in that book that resonated with you, and then kind of bring it up to date as well? Because it's quite an old-ish book, isn't it? It's not a new book, but it feels like it's really come into its own in recent years. Tell us about the book, Jim.
That's a great book introduction. Thank you for that. Yeah, A Whole New Mind was published in 2005, and I read it fairly quickly after it was published. It really reached out and grabbed me for several reasons. One of the key reasons is Daniel Pink is taking the approach from sort of a diversity perspective. You know, we have people that are left brain thinkers, we have people that are right brain thinkers, and the left brain thinkers are the mathematicians, the chemists, the engineers, the technical people. On the other hand, the right brain thinkers are the artists and the creatives and the more softer sciences. And what he basically says in the book is, for too long, we have allowed left brain thinking to have dominance over right brain thinking in our society. And his fundamental thesis simply is the potential of human society will never reach its full potential unless we invite the right brain thinking side over to an equal seat at the table with left brain thinkers. Now we have the full perspective, all of the dimensions. That's kind of the fundamental perspective of the book. But then, of course, he goes into a lot more detail along the way. So that's kind of the opening about the whole book.
And that it was a kind of ahead of its time, wasn't it? Because although AI was by no means new at that point, it wasn't a consumer product. You can, Chat GPT wasn't available at that point. We couldn't harness it the way that was talked about in theory. But of course, now a lot of that left brain thinking, knowledge recall, connecting things together, that is been made much easier now by ChatGPT and other things of that nature. So it's come more into its own, hasn't it, Jim?
Yeah, it really has. I think more and more organizations, businesses, nonprofits, entities, governments, municipalities, and people have woken up and realized, hey, you know what? I have to have an open mind. I have to be willing to respect the wonderful variety and diversity of people and perspectives. And, it's so easy for me, who was originally trained as a chemist, to just drill down into chemistry and only think about chemical, technical, engineering things. And that has its place and its purpose, obviously. However, as my career went in different directions over the decades, I slowly came to realize, wow, I'm robbing myself and the people around me of a lot of benefit if I, for whatever reason, intentionally or unintentionally, refuse to look at these different viewpoints and respect and appreciate the diversity that every thinking group brings to the table, if you will.
Very needed at the moment, isn't it? That kind
Very
of bigger
needed.
picture thinking. So just the final thing from me for this section, there's 6 aptitudes identified in that book, Jim: design, story, symphony, empathy, play, and meaning. Which of those kind of leap out as maybe being overlooked in business today?
When I thought about that topic, I have to tell you, I'm like, wow. Ask me to pick among who my favorite children are out of 6 or whatever. That's a tough one. But to give you an answer, I will have to come down with symphony. I think there are people and organizations out there that still have a lot of work to do on appreciating the role of the conductor of the orchestra, the individuals that are willing to look at the vastness and the variation and the diversity and variety of people and their gifts and their tools that are out there, and be willing to understand how to be the conductor and get them all working in a beautiful way to create that symphony. So I would say they're all very much needed, and we're making great progress in so many ways. But if I had to pick one, I'm going to say symphony.
Good
Tough
answer.
question. Good answer.
Tough question, good answer though. So Jim, you've worked with lots of entrepreneurs and professionals. Are you noticing a shift in working patterns? So do you think people are using AI in the right way and realizing the importance of the skills such as relationship building?
I love this question for several reasons. I think a lot of business owners are all over AI, meaning they're on it. They want to do it. They're getting it into the business any way they can. I remember talking to a consultant a few years ago, and he said to me, we had a new client intake process that would take about 12 days. And by looking at the steps in that process that we could delegate to the AI world, and then look at the parts where we had to have a human touching it and dealing with it, we took our 10, 12-day intake process down to about a day and a half.
Wow.
So yeah, there are people that are definitely embracing it. Now, simultaneously, you have people like me. I'm going along with it, but at the same time, I think I know too much. So I'm keeping a lot of it at arm's length for a while yet, because I'm still walking through, analyzing, thinking about the risks, the benefits, what will work for me and what would not really be the great fit for me. Because there's a bottom line here that when you have a consumer or a customer or a client out there, and they're coming to you, your entity, your company, your business,
Mm.
Everybody can kind of recognize when they think they're coming to you and they have a sense of a tinny, artificial, pun intended, presence that they know is not you in flesh and blood. And that can leave a bad taste in the mouth too. So I think there's a lot of benefits. I think there's a lot
Yeah.
of risks.
I think you make a really good point there. I think particularly we get so hung up on making everything streamlined and cutting out as much padding as we can in our everyday jobs. I think particularly something like us for our onboarding with new members, we need to get a lot of information to them, but we also need to be accessible to them and then feel like they're talking to a human who might want to understand the nuances of what it is they need explaining, you know, that kind of thing. So it's not black and white all the time, is it? So I think you're right. And it can be quite jarring when it's obviously a piece of AI that's in front of you and not a person, isn't it? So yeah, it's getting that balance for sure.
And another reason why I mentioned earlier, kind of keeping a lot of it at arm's length, is you have some tremendously complex, challenging issues on the horizon. Intellectual property, copyright law, how you may unintentionally pollute your own persona online by virtue of something AI did on your behalf that maybe you didn't want it to do. So there's a lot of fine tuning points in here that I'm still studying and exploring and looking for a solution to.
That's I think that's another way of looking at your response, Jim, when you talk about symphony. And you were talking about it as kind of managing people and elements within a business. But I think a big part of AI is a person managing its potential and knowing where it's appropriate, where it's useful, and where it's maybe not. Because I've spent a lot of time using chat, for example, and it has massive blind spots by definition, because I think as humans, we forget how many layers of ethics and next steps. And but what about that bit over there? And of course, if you tell AI about the bit over there, it will incorporate it into its thinking. But if you don't tell it, it will carry on making assumptions based on huge swathes of information that it doesn't have. And I think that's where I see it as a symphony of what's your version of this thing that's going to work.
I totally agree. I totally agree. You know, I happen to be a very good writer. And 4 or 5 years ago, when I first started dabbling with AI, I started experimenting and throwing in a lot of my work and throwing in some guidelines. And I said, create a blog post draft for me on XYZ or whatever. What I found was the output given to me for that draft of a blog post, because I am a good writer, I was spending massively more time editing it and fine tuning it than just writing the whole thing from scratch myself. So you have those kinds of challenges, I think.
Definitely. Okay, let's talk a bit more specifically about networking. You see it straight away, don't you, Jim? Are people listening or are they in broadcast mode? If people are in broadcast mode and maybe not listening in a networking context, what does that a bit reveal about their ability to thrive in this human-centric age that Daniel Pink's kind of described to us?
That is such an excellent observation. Thank you for bringing that up. You know, I am very conscientious of looking at the people around me and observing, are they truly in broadcast mode, or are they in a connection, a relationship kind of a mode? And most of us, we can spot the difference immediately. And what I don't like about that is, if the person is in broadcast mode, that tells me they're only thinking about selling something. And nobody likes to be sold. Nobody wants that. So those individuals going forward will probably have a challenge with flexibility and adaptability going into the future of whatever the AI landscape puts in front of us. Because a lot of times when I've met people that are in broadcast mode, they're so honed in to the old school, traditional cold calling, direct selling approach, where you spray and pray, you get the law of large numbers out there, you get 20,000 initial contacts, and you drill it on down to getting some meetings, and then you drill it on down to having 2 or 3 sales. I mean, to me, does it work? Sure, it works. But is it the best way? Is it the most fulfilling way to run your business and connect with people? No way. So people that are stuck in that mode, I genuinely feel sorry for them, because they're robbing themselves of a much more fulfilling experience, and of course they're robbing all the people around them of the much better benefits they could have in front of them and coming to them by focusing in on the relationship.
And I think that's perpetuated. You say that's kind of an old school approach to, let's just get the numbers and drill it down. But there does seem to be a narrative now, and a lot of this is led by AI, that the false idea that you can just create funnels, you can automate everything, and you can do this kind of smart marketing that doesn't really need you to do the really fiddly, time-consuming thing about having conversations with people. That's really old-fashioned. And we're seeing that a lot. You hear a lot of people talking in those terms. But if you look at the origins of marketing and branding, they are about two-way communication. They are about as listening as much as they are as talking. So people are trying to build funnels and processes to acquire clients on the false premise that it's just about saying things in slightly different ways, and that's what's going to lead you to making sales. But us as networkers know that no one's going to listen to you if you don't listen to them. It's the wrong starting point, isn't it?
It absolutely is. I love one of the things I heard Dr. Ivan Meisner say years ago. He said, "Be interested, not interesting."
Mm.
Anybody in this room, if we let ourselves, we can make ourselves really interesting to other people around us. We can do that. It's kind of natural to the human species. However, the more quality, more important priority is, I don't want to make myself interesting to the people around me. I want to be interested in the people around me, because it all starts with human relationship. And when I think back to the most exciting, attractive, interesting encounters I've had with people, it's when those people would come to me, and instead of talking about themselves, they were very interested in learning everything about me. Dale Carnegie once said, the sweetest sound to any person is the sound of their own voice. And tragically, and yet in terms of being clear, that's true. We're all guilty of it. However, when I can focus on the other person, tell me more about how your business works, tell me how you got into that business, and so on. I'm letting them know I'm interested in you. I want to hear from you. I want to understand who you are as a human being, what your context is, where you've been in life before. And now you're building that tight, high quality relationship with that other person. And that then is laying the foundation for everything that can flow beyond that. And that is so far superior, again, to the traditional cold calling, direct selling, large numbers model and mindset.
Yeah, it's a much more comfortable place to be, isn't it, for all parties concerned? So, Jim, is there a human superpower that you see in great networkers? That thing that you wish you saw in more people. what does that exist? What would you say that is?
I think the superpower is to continuously remind yourself, at least I think this is my superpower, and I think this is a superpower I see in others.
Mm-hmm.
As I go into any kind of a situation, a business meeting, a networking opportunity, a coffee club situation, whatever it might be, I'm meeting new people. I find that I will mentally, emotionally, intellectually remind myself, Jim, this isn't about you, but it is about you reaching out to these wonderful people that many of which you might be meeting for the first time today. And I want to focus on what can I do to help these individuals? What can I do to bring value to the room? What can I do to add value to this person's life or to their organization or their business? I would say, I think that's my superpower. And I think that is a superpower that works for many, many people that really do business networking well.
No, I couldn't agree more. You have that in abundance, Jim. And when you meet somebody that has that, wow, what a different experience the conversation is, isn't it? And why wouldn't the recipient of that want to help you as a result of you being there and adding value to them? So, yeah.
And it also just kind of aligns with a lot of people's general philosophy about life, about the universe, about karma, that, hey, if I'm giving, it's better than receiving. But in giving, it has its own rewards that go beyond just business or monetary.
It was really nice that you said there, Jim, about because I think this is overlooked sometimes at networking. You talked about, hey, I've got an opportunity to meet lots of new people today. And we always say people are endlessly fascinating. And it's why me and Kelly love networking, because it's an opportunity to meet people that you wouldn't ordinarily meet. What a gift that is. And my question to you, Kelly, because your superpower is the energy that you bring, isn't it, to the room? And, you know, a lot of people reference this, how you make them feel. People come off of calls with you going, oh, wow, you know, what is your Daniel Pink, when you know that Jim brings up about the symphony, sensing the bigger picture and reading the room, is that what you're doing, or is that energy just more of a fundamental thing that you try and bring to networking?
I think we can massively overcomplicate this, can't we? I think there is it doesn't cost you anything to be nice. Okay, if you're having a conversation with someone, just be nice. Hold that space for them, listen to them. Exactly what Jim's saying. How can I add value to you? I have a lot of conversations on a daily basis. And I was saying to somebody this morning that it's very rare I come off of a call and I haven't made an introduction or given a bit of advice, not unsolicited, you know, to that person that I'm speaking to. Because why wouldn't I do that if I can do that quite freely and it's not costing me anything? I don't often get asked that in return on the call, and that you know, that's fine. That's not what it's all about. But people will come back to me because of the way I've treated them in the first place. And I think for me, I do genuinely believe people are endlessly fascinating. I will give anybody half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour of my time if they're prepared to sit and be respectful of me, of that time, and share that conversation. And I think the true energy of someone comes through when they're engaged in that space. That's when you see somebody's true energy. So I think we can massively overcomplicate it. You can't force energy. You can't pretend to be that person. You know, you can't bring energy with you if you don't have it. You can try and dial it up a little bit, but it's fundamentally what you have in you. And I just think, just let yourself be who you are in that space, because your energy will attract like energy.
You say you can't force it. I mean, I don't have the same angelic glow as you might have guessed. But my version of that is more along the lines of what Jim's saying. If I'm not feeling on top of the world, and this was me in my previous life for a long, long time, just go to networking and make it about the other people. Like there was something really liberating and made it very easy for me to think, I'm not here to talk about me because that stuff's a bit of a mess. What I want to do is just know about you, tell me how I can help. And that creates its own energy. It's like Jim's saying, when you help people, typically they're going to listen to you, they're going to reciprocate. So I'm kind of backing you up there by saying, I don't think it is that complicated. It isn't some X factor. You've got both bits. You've got the practical bit, but you've also got your energy is just really attractive anyway.
I'm just a bit abnormal. I don't ever go on to a meeting not feeling it. Do you know what I mean? Because it's what I love doing. I'm sure there's some days I'm a 9.9 and others I'm a 10. That's okay. It's fine.
Just brought up hi Anissa. She's has put energy is everything. Yeah, it is an and it probably, doesn't it, Jim, plug into Daniel Pink's idea that, you know, something like the energy that you bring into business would have previously been seen as a soft skill. That's not a hard KPI driven thing, therefore it's not important. But what we're saying here is that in this context of the way the world is shifting, relationships, personalization in networking, all this stuff is becoming more important. Or is the question perhaps that it's always been important, we're just now recognizing it? That's a better question.
That's a really good point, James. Thanks for bringing that up. You know, as we had that comment about the energy is everything, and then what you just said, I immediately thought about some of my experiences back in my corporate America days where, well, first of all, let me back up a step. I got to say this first. I have always had the attitude and the mindset that I need to be able to get up out of bed every day and be passionate and enthusiastic and excited and on point about what I get to do today. Not a mindset of, oh, I have to do whatever it is today. No, I get to be alive and do this and that and the other thing. So I've always had the mindset, you got to be able to get up every day and bring the passion, the energy, the focus, be on point. Why? Because you're excited about how you're going to be able to help other people and talk to other people and meet other people and move businesses forward and move people forward. So that relates to the energy. Now, go back to my corporate America days. I want it to be clear. I am very grateful for the decades I've spent in corporate America. I will admit and agree, Dilbert is still alive and well in corporate America, and we get a lot of sadness, but we get a lot of humor out of that too. However, back in my days in corporate America didn't always know how to take Jim Meadows because I would bring that energy. Now, depending on the context, sometimes they knew how to take it, and I was able to flow and collaborate and enhance things, and we saw a lot of great things happen. Other times, certain groups or subgroups within that whole corporate America context would sort of be like, that Jim Meadows, we better stay away from him type thing. You know, they didn't always know how to take me, but that's okay. I had to be who I am and do the best I could, adapting to the environment so that I could add value there. And in the general world of networking and being an entrepreneur or a business person, and in the general world of what you folks do with Only and all of the great networking things, yes, we ought to be the kind of people that are excited and enthusiastic about what we get to do every day. And the day you realize, wow, I can't be passionate and enthusiastic about what I'm doing, that's the day you realize I need to find something else to do that I can bring that energy to.
That's such a good point. I think what you've just described there, Jim, is really interesting, because I think when you are somebody that has very buoyant energy, is a very positive person, that can be quite overwhelming for some people, particularly people that don't share the ability to be in that space as easily. And that can be quite debilitating for them, can't it? So I can see why people maybe would want to push you over to the side over there, because it's like, oh, you know, Jim and Kelly are always upbeat. Oh God, I never feel like that. It's easier to ignore it, isn't it? And I sometimes have to catch myself with that sometimes. We've had this conversation, James, haven't we? I know how annoying I am because I'm always happy. It's always a 10 out of 10, you know, it doesn't matter what's happening. I genuinely do every morning think I'm lucky to be here, and I'm just going to enjoy my day and I'm just going to go through it as best I can. But if you're not of that mindset, that's really annoying. Consistently, isn't it? I'm asking, maybe should asking you this, James. Is it really annoying?
just for the record, you are presenting me as someone who's basically, when you're upbeat and positive, I'm going, stop being so happy.
Yeah.
I'm not
I've got a
doing
story on that one.
Oh, I think we need to
I've
hear.
got a story on that one. Back in my corporate America days, I had several years where my main opportunity was doing corporate training. And that was all kinds of training: sexual harassment training, software training, technical training, HR training, you name it, I trained it. I also did a lot of new hire training. And I remember we would do surveys at the end of every class. A new hire class would come in for 4 weeks, and I was the chief trainer, and I would train them for 4 weeks with some assistants and everything. And we always had a good time. But we had to get a lot of information conveyed into their skulls. Okay. But anyway, one time my boss and I were sitting in her office, and she was going through the surveys with me. And she picked up one of the surveys and read it. And she said, "Oh, look what this person wrote. That Jim Meadows is way too enthusiastic." When she said that to me, I did this: guilty as charged. And then she looked right back at me and she said, "Don't ever quit." So people genuinely appreciate it and like it when they understand the value, where it's coming from, and all that. But your point's well taken, Kelly. There can be contexts and individuals that don't quite get it. And but that's okay. You know, we still have an ethical responsibility and opportunity to still reach out to those individuals and do what we can to support them and help them.
Yeah.
Keep being you. That's what I say. Both.
Yeah, very much so.
But the only positive in my corner is that I'm a critical thinker, and sometimes when you're overtly positive about everything, it means you're not catching. There's no opportunity to ever adjust anything, because if it's all positive, it's business as usual. But that can get taken too far, and equally, I need people that are upbeat to stop me being too critical. So it's the balance, isn't it?
Yeah, and we joke.
And I agree totally with what you say there. Even though I'm enthusiastic, I'm positive, I always have an optimistic, positive mindset and attitude. Believe you me, I can be brutal when I need to be brutal, in the sense that we have to look at certain realities. We have to look at certain results. We have to be willing to look at performance and look for the ways we can make things better. Look for the areas of struggle or deficiency or defects in the system that we cannot ignore. We cannot just gloss over, because that's all a part of being a business person. But even beyond that, it's a part of being a thinking, quality human being that wants to become better at being a human being. So your points are very well taken there.
There's another thing that Daniel Pink, this is like subtitle of the Daniel Pink Appreciation Society episode. He talked about this idea of curation of content has become more important than sharing information. The example he gives is, previously you walked into a car showroom, the person selling the car knew more about the car than you did, so you were asking them for information in order to make a buying decision. Now, you can walk into a car showroom, and if you've done your research, you are likely to know more than the person selling the car, you know more than the person selling the car. Therefore, the important thing in order to sell the car, or indeed any other thing, is to curate the information, because we've actually got too much of it. So I'm going to talk. My first question is about AI generated content, Jim. Why should you be cautious of that, and maybe think about curation rather than just creating more content?
That's another really, really, really good question. And, you know, I think you're right. We are flooded with AI content, and a lot of it has value, but I think a lot of it doesn't necessarily have value. So that leads us to, what's our curation process going to look like in practice? Number one, we should always be thinking about our network and our audience, because I want to be able to curate content and information that I know will be meaningful to my network and my audience. Then, number two, curating content. I must curate content that will be most helpful and relevant to those individuals. So number one, you think about who's my audience, who's in my network. So you kind of have that as a context. But then number two, you got to drill down deeper, and you got to think more specifically about what are the kinds of content that I can curate and put in front of Bill or Barbara or Samuel so that they will genuinely benefit. And then I always believe there's a third step there, because you're talking about creation too. I think at least it kind of works this way for me. I think that we have to allow all of that curated content to feed back into our own pipeline of content creation. Many a times I've written a blog post because I first did a thorough job of curating relevant content for my network, for my audience, got that information to them, they appreciated it, and then it's percolating in the back burner of my brain for several weeks, days, years even. And then I am coming up with some ideas or new insights or new twists on that concept or that content, whatever it is. And that then gives me some great raw material to write my next blog post. I've had that happen to me many, many times. So that's those are the key things I would say on that topic.
And the key there, I think, again, is going back to the point earlier, is that that's the two-way communication, isn't it? You know, you can't curate information if you don't know what people know and what they don't know. And that's why asking questions is so important. If you want to speak in an authoritative way and fill in the gaps, you can't just make that up. You've got to ask those questions in order to get that information. Kelly, I'm very aware of time. We're going to jump to segment 4. So I'm just going to jump into that first question. So Jim, if a task can be done faster by a machine, it's at risk. What skills should small business owners double down on to stay relevant?
That is the age-old question since entering this AI era we find ourselves in. The first thing I think is those business owners, those individual business people, those professionals, number one, they need to do something AI cannot do. One of the things AI cannot do, now you might get some argument on this, but I'm talking on a certain level now. One of the things AI cannot do is reading the landscape. There are going to be nuances and insights and trend points, data points that you're going to tune into that AI may not necessarily have a clue on, or even if AI picks up something there, they're not going to bring the same human awareness to it. So number one, I would say you've got to be good at reading the landscape, and that's going to come from your cumulative industry knowledge and human experience, something, again, AI will not be able to do. And then a second element is simply, we touched on it earlier, pun intended, the human touch. No matter how good AI is, it's not going to press the flesh, but we can. We have the human touch. And then I think, thinking about what Daniel Pink said in A Whole New Mind, we can take all of that insight and awareness, and we can now be the storyteller. We can be the synthesizer. We can be the meaning maker. we can be the orchestra conductor of all of that. And I'll give you dollars to donuts any day. AI can't do all that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's something else that AI possibly can't do, and that's empathy. So let's just talk about empathy for a second. It gets mentioned a lot, doesn't it? And I find it interesting. I very occasionally meet somebody who thinks we don't need that in networking because we're there to do a transaction, and then I go, this is probably not somebody that I want to have another conversation with. But how do you practically develop it as a skill in a professional setting, Jim?
Man, that's such a loaded question. It was actually 7-ish years ago. I read about college admissions officers, and obviously college admissions officers clearly have their finger on the pulse of the quality of incoming students. And for the first time in history, college admissions officers about 7 years ago were making the statement, the greatest need we see among incoming students, empathy.
Mm.
Man, that says a lot, empathy. So,
Yeah.
couple of things here. First of all, that very observation positions the idea in front of us that in our world today, because of where human society is at, we're kind of at a dark place in certain ways. So the question becomes, what has happened? What has gone on that we're at a place where college admissions instructors are saying, starting about 7 years ago, our greatest need in incoming freshmen is empathy. They need to understand what empathy is and how they should have it integrated into their lives. Now, I will also posit that if you don't have empathy, you must be a psychopath. Because if I'm going to be a real successful psychopath, I don't want to have empathy, right?
Yeah.
That'll make you really good at that role. Obviously, we don't want that. So then we need to move beyond that to the specific question, how can we develop empathy as a professional skill? Wow, that's a loaded question, but I do have a couple thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Number one, anything we can do to help people in industry, in business, understand how they come across to other people is a beginning of developing empathy as a professional skill. My background, when I was in a doctoral program for ministry, I was in a doctoral seminar on leadership, and the professors took our cohort of half a dozen students in the doctoral program, the seminar we were in that semester, and they threw us into a big room on campus, and they gave each of us an individual portfolio in a fictitious organization. And you read your confidential portfolio and you played the role of whatever that fictitious person was in this fictitious nonprofit corporation. And they were videotaping the entire interaction of everybody role playing for the whole day. And then all evening long, they would replay the tapes and critique. And we did this for a solid week.
Wow.
And the topic of this doctoral seminar was leadership. And that was an incredibly eye-opening experience for me, because when I saw myself dealing with some challenging situations from a leadership perspective, other colleagues in the class, as well as myself, in watching me on videotape, I learned probably the most important business leadership lesson I've ever learned for me personally and professionally. And it was this: because of my passion and my leadership understanding and drive as a leader, I would often come across too strong in my leadership. And it kind of had its genesis in my passion for completing the mission, if you will. Nevertheless, Jim Meadows back then was not giving nearly as much forethought to how I will come across to other people. But by having that opportunity to watch myself get replayed on these video clips and getting their critique from my class, and me being able to see it from the outside, this is what Jim Meadows looks like from the outside, Jim, and it wasn't all pretty. That was the biggest, most powerful lesson I'd ever learned in my life about my leadership. And from that day forward, I adjusted my style, because I finally realized, Jim, it's great that you want to complete the mission. It's great that you want to keep the group going forward, but man, you got to tone it down in how you come across and in how you convey that, because you want people to have an enjoyable, positive experience when you're the leader, not feeling they're being pushed around type thing. So that was like a really powerful experience for me. Now, I reference that because it had such meaning for me, but it also just illustrates to all of us watching the podcast, you know what? You don't always know exactly how you do come across to other people unless you can somehow see it from the outside like I did, and or you have caring confidants and mentors around you that are willing to have a caring conversation with you and confront you with those realities. So to me, I think that would be a good start on how we professionally develop empathy in any individual and in any organization. And then there's so much more to build on beyond that, such as emotional intelligence.
Yeah, definitely.
I think one of the problems with empathy is that it feels counter to what business culture is about, which is, how is that going to benefit me now? So if you think of empathy, you might think, well, that's an altruistic characteristic. You're not going to gain anything by being empathic of others. In fact, in the cutthroat world of business, it might actually work against you. And if that's you, if you think about what I've just described there and you think, yeah, empathy, that doesn't feel like it's going to benefit me in business, be cynical about it. Because what you'll find is, if this helps you get there, if you show people empathy, if you show people that you care, if you listen to them and attempt to give them help and support, they're going to listen to you and probably do it in reverse. So just be incredibly cynical, because no, you don't have to be, but if you have a problem with applying empathy in business, that's the way you can go about it, because then you'll learn why it is so beneficial to be empathic, because you'll start to see the results.
You are completely correct. And there's a book that Larry Kendall wrote. It's called Ninja Selling. He's coming from the industry of real estate, but 98% of everything he says in the book is directly applicable to your business and mine or anyone's business. But two of the key themes he brings out in that book that directly derive from exactly what you just said, James: stop selling, start serving, and stop selling, start solving. Because now you realize I don't have to go by that old school dynamic of cutthroat sales, mercenary sales. I got to always think about what's in it for me. I don't have to do that. I want to think about the other people. What can I do to help them? Because the more I help that customer, that client, the more that client benefits. But one way or another, directly or indirectly, I'm going to benefit too.
That's brilliant. Okay.
But it starts
Kelly,
with serving the other person.
Love that.
Yes.
Time check again, Kelly. Go to segment 5 and skip to the final question, because we are running out of time.
I've actually let me get to that segment. I was getting very enthralled in that conversation there. So, Jim, what's the one quality you try to lead with in any networking or business conversation? What's that quality that stands out to you?
I had to think long and hard about that kind of a question. because it's so important, and there are so many things that I put into that situation. But I would say it's the backstory. What I mean by that is I want to understand that person's backstory. I want to understand that person's origin story.
Mhm.
Who are you? Where did you come from? Where have
Yeah.
you been before? What have you experienced? Good, bad, ugly. What is your background that has now positioned you to the role in which you find yourself today? And the reason I love to lead with that kind of a prompt is, let's face it, those are the questions that deeply touch the key points at the core of our individual humanity, our individual being and life experience. And when
Yeah.
people begin to share on that, wow, it can be so intimate and so powerful. And you know, I say intimate, but I want to clarify. I lead with that. Tell me more about where you're from. Tell me more about how you got into this business. Tell me how you made those decisions. That's all a part of that backstory and the origin story. And then oftentimes that person will elaborate further, and then it can become very intimate and sensitive, but that's okay because they are voluntarily sharing that. And that tells you you're making that human, high quality relationship connection. So that would be my answer to that. The backstory, I want to hear your backstory. I want to hear your origin story.
Yeah, I think you are absolutely spot on with that. And I think when you can get people to talk openly and honestly, without needing to think too much about what they have to answer with, you can have that open and honest conversation. We know ourselves inside out, back to front. So if somebody asks you a question about your past, you can answer that off of the tip of your tongue, can't you? You don't have to think about it. And I think that relationship build, as you said, Jim, it becomes deeper a lot quicker. Not everybody wants to do that, and that's okay, that's fair enough. But there's also a second piece to that for me. The amount of times somebody's told me about their backstory or their origins, and there's been an opportunity because of what they've done before. Oh gosh, you need to speak to so and so, or yeah, no, somebody was talking about that the other day. You'd get on really well with them. I'll connect you. I think that's the bit then that opens up more doors for introductions and that synergy piece.
Bacon and exactly. You nailed it, Felly.
I love that.
What
I
a
love
great
that.
line. What a great line. Well, hopefully, we're going to start to wrap up now, but hopefully we've given you a sense of some of those AI-proof things, or in fact, how you can complement AI, use it in your business. And it is things like empathy, story, connection. And if you want to turn those abilities into real results, networking is absolutely the best place to learn how to implement that in your business. Kelly, over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly why we created the online business networking course. So that helps you tap into those human strengths and get strategic about how you use them and grow your business. It's comprehensive. It's a 12-piece module. It's a self-led program, and you will learn how to get more from your networking and how to enjoy it more in the process.
There is a web address on your screen. It is in the description if you haven't got it. And there is a code, podcast20, to get £20 off of the course. But for now, it's time to wrap up. Thank you ever so much for joining us on Adventures in Networking. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, and share this episode.
And a huge thank you to you, Jim. If you're not already connected with Jim, do connect with him and reach out for a conversation. You will not regret it. Thank you, everyone, for supporting this show, and we will see you next time.